So today we have two time zone. One is the Central European time in the Netherlands, and the other time is in Canada. Which city are you now, actually?
I'm in Montreal.
Yeah, in Montreal. So today we have a filmmaker based in Montreal. His name is Alexandre Larose. Yeah, maybe you should introduce yourself a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Alexandre Larose. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, great. So maybe we start with, because the way I know your work, of course, you developed this very specific technique, has a lot of multi-exposure. That's really like almost your signature of your film. But maybe first question I would like to jump there straight away is, what does that mean to you? These superimposition images, like multi-layers. Is there any specific feeling for you personally?
Yeah, it's interesting when I was thinking about that this week, what it means. I'm not sure exactly. I mean, I think I've always been kind of a obsessive person a little bit, and very attracted to repetition. Like I love executing something that has a pattern, and the performance of repeating it in a certain way kind of has always been something that I enjoyed for some reason, even though sometimes it becomes really like I'm enslaved to this process, but somehow I find great satisfaction in this. And then, I mean, I suppose right now it's kind of the way that this impulse is rendered comes out, in film as superimposition and this kind of technique. But I think if it could be probably output in a different way if I chose a different medium to express that, I think. And then I think now it's been developing in this way for some reasons, and I'm not sure why, but yeah.
It's nice you mentioned about this repetitive thing that you are enjoying. Maybe we could maybe we go back a little bit. How did you start this series of pronunciation? Prolord.
Yeah, but brouillard is another. Brouillard is, I know it's also quite difficult to pronounce if you're not French speaking. But yeah, brouillard, how it started was I had been struggling, or not struggling, but I had been involved in a project before brouillard that was really taking a lot of energy just in planning and the shooting for that other project was very sparse. Like sometimes it was taking years before I got permission to shoot somewhere, and then I would do the shoot and then go back for another couple months or years before having permission. So when I was doing that, I was also doing a lot of optical printing in the meantime, and so spending time in a dark room with a machine, and those two things combined was almost kind of forcing me to find a different way to have a practice, because I was finding it sometimes quite frustrating to rely on things that I couldn't control to shoot. It's like if you're a painter and you can't paint, it's difficult. So I think I was faced with something like that. And so when this project was going on, I started to just go out of my apartment with a camera initially, and then just to find a space that I could shoot in, and then try that accumulation of layers. But it's strange, because I know I was doing. A good friend of mine, Heather Reed, who also lives in Montreal, like we were doing a project together that involved that at the beginning, and then it's around that time that that brouillard kind of happened as well. And yeah, I don't know. I think it was to come back and make a short story. It was kind of a way to have a practice that I could rely on myself, and then not not having to wait and then just shoot. That's part of it for sure.
Mm. And also before that, you do a lot of optical printing, and from this series, you actually do a lot of in camera. So how does this transition happen? Was something aware, or you are aware, or there was other thought about it?
Yeah, it's exactly like I think I got a little bit I got a little bit tired of working in the optical printing room in the dark, and I wanted to be outside. I really wanted to be outside and not having to edit anything. Because sometimes if I'm confronted with editing, it never ends. Like it can go on for, like, I'm never satisfied. I always will cut a bit more or review the cuts, and it drives me really crazy. And so with that project, it was a way to limit myself to, once it's shot, it's shot. There's nothing I can do about it. And it was quite liberating, actually. I was it put then a lot of excitement in the capturing of the images, and I was really okay with whatever was going to happen during that performance of producing these roles, this series, which is why, like, I think some of the iterations of Brouillard have, some of them have had accidents, like some image that the camera either stopped working or the roll broke, but then I still process that, and it's part of the images. And so, yeah, I think it was just a way to avoid editing and focus on like the performance of shooting.
And then so this series consists of a few films, and it sounds like you give yourself liberation but limitation at the same time, that you have maybe you can describe a bit for the people who don't know, like you have a limit duration, and then maybe you describe the process of making this performative filming, let's say.
Yeah, that's it. Like it's the so the limitation comes from the length of the reel. So for instance, the first few rolls I did were about 100 feet of 35 millimeter, and 100 feet of 35 is roughly 1 minute, or I think I was actually putting a little bit more in the camera to be safe, but I was limiting myself to that. And then for the later iterations, I had 5 rolls of Ektachrome 35, which were 1,000 feet. So I know in Europe you are more in meters, so I think it's 300 meters, and that's about 10 minutes of projection, And so that was a limitation of how long that film would be. And then I would, set the frame rate according to how long it takes to go through the space I was shooting in, and those were the parameters, basically. And the whole series kind of unfolded as I would try. I would want to see how the number of layers affected the output, like how the space would be rendered. And so by the end, I knew, I kind of knew how much I needed to expose and to get a certain quality that I was looking for. And sometimes I was just very curious to see what it was going to look like, because it's very difficult to predict how things look with that kind of approach. And that was definitely something that was interesting to me. I know I'm going a little bit out of bounds with your first question, but yeah.
Yeah, because do you do tests before this series start, or you really just each time really exploring the frame rate, all this aperture and stuff like that? Or
Yeah, I definitely tested a lot. Initially, I took a lot of still photographs, on 35 with a still camera, just to see technically how does light adds up if you have so much exposures. Does it have a linear, relationship or not? And then eventually, when I thought I had enough confidence with that, I tried with motion picture, and then I faced the problem of the variation of light and in the space. And so, yes, I tested a lot. Like I think got to the point that I could be quite good at predicting how a certain space would evolve with the light and how to expose, but still some things would happen that I still couldn't predict, which was okay. But there was a lot of testing for sure, and just also not only the way the light works, but also for the equipment, because of mechanical, the analog medium has the mechanical technology, so it is bound to be vulnerable to fatigue and stress when it's put under so much strain. And I was worried. I was often worried whether the camera would be able to run the film so many times. And so that was something that I was worried about. But then I found some ways to make it work. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's not my intention to focus on too much technical part, but I just curious. Like, so if I understood correct, like there are many layers on this series, and then each time you rewind in the camera, or you had to go back to the darkroom to rewind the film.
Yeah, it depended on the type of camera I was using and the type of film. Sometimes I could rewind in camera, sometimes I couldn't. So it really depended on the gear. And yeah.
I kind of imagine, because I think the film, I don't know how many layers you had, but it looked really many layers, and then the movement are really smooth. It's maybe also because of the frame rate you are using. And then I can imagine when you're accumulating so many layers, it's also require a lot of your physical experience. Like you had to walk from A to B. You always start from A to B, I think, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
How does that physical experience for you when you are creating this series?
Yeah, well, that's one part of I think of my work or practice that's been there before this project, and that's probably going to be there after. The fact of being active, and and yeah, I mean, that's also something I remember when I was about to start shooting the longer iterations with a bigger film reel. I did test before if I was going to be able to carry the weight of the camera and the battery and those things. And, but it's okay. Like I think, I don't know. I think, yeah, how can I say this? Yeah, I did try. And then, I realized I could do it. So I just had to be very careful, doing it and not trip on anything. But the aspect of performing with the camera, with the body, is definitely something that I enjoy, and I'm kind of looking for that in the projects. Yeah.
You mentioned looking for that. Could you explain a little bit?
Yeah. Well, like in my earlier works, I was kind of like always looking for or I don't even know if it was conscious, but I filmed, one of my first film was inside a train tunnel. That train tunnel was just being there was an experience. And then another project was involved, accessing high-rise buildings and throwing these cameras off, and just being in that space was kind of like giving me a lot of tension. But I like that, and I like to be in that state where somehow I trust my reaction, and and then Brouillard, I guess, was more a domestic thing, like, and maybe that could be why I then started this other series with my parents. But I think I needed to find a space that was maybe less aggressive than a tunnel or the roof of a building, but that I could still kind of trigger those things in me when I work, and I think with Brouillard, for instance, it came from having all these limitations that I put on myself, and the fact that if you work on film, you can't make a mistake, and this kind of created those conditions that I was looking for differently in these other works. It's like the space itself was hostile, but then for Brouillard, it's the whole process was in a way hostile just in the sense that it's you have to pay attention, you have to be kind of on your guard, so yeah, I don't know, I suppose I'm getting lost a little bit again, but
in that series you have created a few of them. They are a little bit different, and then what have you discovered between them that you don't know before you make them?
Well, I think every time, as I went along and shot all the iterations, I was always looking for, I suppose, like, let's say the first one, the first one I shot, which was on Super 8, I was fascinated by how with the accumulation you start losing, you can't keep up with what layer is where, or you start to lose the capacity to discern that, and that really made me excited. Like, I was just excited to see how it looked. And then when I started on 35 after that, I was always looking to recreate this feeling I had watching the first one, and then of course shooting the first one on 35 made me discover new things. And because the canvas on 35 is so defined, it's like if you're painting on a really large surface instead of just a small thing. And then suddenly Super 8 was flattening everything, and the layers kind of look abstract, like almost compressed. But on 35, to get to that point, you really needed to, I needed to do a lot of layers, but that was not that desirable in the end, like, because I like to still see the detail of each, but then sometimes they just kind of, they one leaves, you start to see another one, I don't know. And then it was really to see how this like strange space that's not something you see, you can't see that other than with this process. And I was just excited to keep going back to that world somehow. Every time I finished an iteration, I was looking forward to to go back and try again, just to see it again, and and differently, with a different, maybe a different color or something. And it was quite kind of the look of a child on things. Like, I was not trying something, like, I was really just excited about seeing it, and then, trying to access it over and over again until I was like, okay, I think I'm done, but.
Do you do one film at the time, or you do few film at the same time?
You mean, let's say, if I have multiple iterations that are ongoing at the same time, and then I go to, let's say, well, no, I always had, like, let's say now I'm number 9 and it's number 9. And then once number 9 is done, I'm going to go to number 10. And there were never 2 at the same time going on. Yeah.
And then I was wondering, is this place where you're filming, is that near your place that you go there? I was wondering how often you go, and then more or less how many layers. I was wondering this physical experience, like, because if you had to observing or walking through a similar passage many times. Yeah.
Yeah, the I don't know if I understood your question, but it's that place is in the back of my parents' house in Quebec City. So Quebec City is about 3 hours from Montreal, and you know I would go there. Yeah, I mean I was staying there when I did the project, so that space was right there available, and so you know I've observed they moved to this place in 2004, so before, so I think I started in 2008 or 9. So, and that space initially was I don't even know if it's an important detail, you know, for this project, but the city of Quebec owns that part of the land because it's right next to the lake, and they want to control you know, the how people groom that. Like, they don't want people to do anything, but initially they could. So for the first few years, that I don't think I would have been able to do anything there, because it was kind of almost the previous owners had made like a land there, some sort of like you know, they would mow the lawn or something, and eventually, because of how the city regulated it, they could only maintain a little path and let everything else grow on the side. So actually, as the series evolves towards the end, the path becomes narrower and narrower and narrower. But initially, it's kind of, you know, a little bit more open. And it's funny because this last year, when I, you know, of course every year I'll go, but then I was really shocked at how tall the trees are right now in this space. They still live there. And if I were to shoot there again, I would never have the sun. Like everything is blocked by the trees, are gigantic. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Because I was also wondering, each time when you film one layer, you actually are looking through the viewfinder constantly, I guess. And then how is that experience for you? Your visual limitation in that square.
Mm-hmm. You know, some of the first studies, I did not look in the viewfinder. I was just holding it next to my chest on Super 8, and then on 35, yes, I was looking, because because the way the camera is made, if I wasn't looking, I was not going to be sure if it was going to be straight enough. But yeah, definitely it's interesting, because I was using a lens that was wider than my own field of view. So yeah, after a day of shooting, it felt strange to take the camera off my eye, or, you know, just to get this distortion. But I mean, throughout the day, sometimes I couldn't shoot the whole day, so I was not that much in contact with the viewfinder, you know, but definitely every time I finished a take, taking the you know, removing the camera was I almost had this vertiginous thing going on, because I felt, oh, everything is closer or something. And
I wonder, like, how you carry your camera.
Well, it like it they have a brace for the bigger ones. Like they have an actual thing that you put on the shoulder, so otherwise it would be impossible. Like the one that has the big for the 300-meter thing, you without that would be very difficult. And then the camera I had before that, for the shorter ones, that one I could just like kind of hold like this, like a 16 mil, like a Bolex basically. And then Super 8, you know, you're just holding it next to my chest. and you know, I could more or less see that it was straight.
Mm-hmm. And you had to walk very slowly as well.
No, I mean, the walk was more it was more the frame rate that I could adjust to the length of the roll. I think maybe only in Super 8, because Super 8, I couldn't adjust sometimes that much. Then yes, I would pace up or pace down depending on yeah, exactly like you're saying, like what kind of duration I had. Yeah.
So this frame rate decision was made according to the length of the film, or is made because you want certain feeling of the speed?
Yeah, I think it was both determined from the length of the roll and the length of the space, kind of a relationship between the two. Yeah.
Sometimes I feel a lot of them look so smooth, and then especially later in the other series with your father, it almost looked like a water.
Yeah.
It's actually very, very interesting how the movement creates such smooth tricks.
I think it's a combination of like the optics and the frame rate. They kind of they and then because of how the layers combine, if one jerk on one side is canceled by another on the other side and so on, so it kind of makes this weird average kind of trajectory that looks smooth. Yeah, but if it were only one, then it would be kind of, all over a bit. But yeah.
And would you like to share, like, from that series, you at some point you start to work a lot more with your parents? Could you share that series about it?
The new series, that when I was finishing Brouillard, obviously having spent a few years, few summers at the house, I was just observing how they, or kind of passively observing how they move around, and their ritual every day. If one gets out of the house, what happens, and then when they get in, and often they'd have this very kind of a very specific way of performing all these things, and then I started to stage these moments towards the end of Brouillard, and as kind of like self-contained long takes. And I just kind of fell in love with the way the motion would kind of organize itself with those layers, and then disintegrate, and then like become one again. And it was just really fascinating to me, a bit like I was saying for Brouillard. I was just fascinated with how it looked, and then I can't the only way for me to experience this is if I do it. I have to shoot this, and so it kind of started like this. It started at home, where they're comfortable, obviously, to do this and to let themselves be filmed. And then later on, I had the opportunity to be in New Zealand for a few months for a project, and at first I wasn't sure what I was going to do, and because of the house I was in, I thought I have to try something in those lines. And then I was wanting to try something completely different with capturing the motion, and then I started to break the motion or the scenes into cuts and to very narrow field of view, and just to kind of see parts of the body, and then that's how the series ended up now. Like it was the new films that I've been starting to show. They're kind of a culmination of these experiences with how to break a scene, and then how to organize the narrative, even though there's no narrative. But it's kind of I don't know, it's like a story it's the story of a very simple motion cut, and then kind of how do you say that, like expanded or multiplied by this thing. And then my father was a good character to work with, because I love his figure. I like how he moves, and he moves in a specific way that somehow really fit with what I was doing.
I assume, or I'm imagining, like, I don't think you asked your father to walk that many times. So does that mean you you kind of set the camera in place and then wait until he come each time?
No, so that's it. No. Yeah, no, that's it. He was extremely generous to give himself to the ritual as well. But I think we're similar in that way. Like he also, I think he also enjoys somehow that like he has a certain of course we're not interviewing him, but he likes like, how can I say this, like in his daily life he has a very regimented kind of schedule, and he's a man of habit, if you want, and I think I'm like that too, and to do this game, to play that game, and it's not that alienating to him, and we it was not like a military situation when we filmed. Of course it's a lot of work, but it was like it was for him, let's say we would do a take, and then he can take a bit of rest while I have to do all the camera work, get ready for the other take, and so, but I understand that I don't think I would have been able to do this if it were someone else, of course. Like I understand that, and I'm very appreciative, of course.
And then the first time when you proposed this idea that you want to film him, how was his reaction?
Yeah, well, when I was finishing Brouillard, I did stage them, like my mother as well. Like they kind of appear as a bit the not all the takes, but they are in some of the iterations already. Like I was actually, and it's interesting because another reason why I started to work with human figure was on Brouillard #2. My nieces, they start to run it was actually the first time I set myself up with the 35, and I'm ready to start this first test on 35. And I start the camera, and then I begin, to shoot, and then here they come, they just run in front of me. And I remember I was kind of screaming, hey, no, stop, don't. But then I couldn't stop. I didn't stop filming, obviously. I just kept going, and eventually they kind of disappear. And I finished, I finished the role and processed it. And I thought, wow, this is so beautiful. I just thought it was, their accidental presence was amazing. And then as the series progressed, I was praying for that to happen again, but without my control, ideally. But at some point I was like, okay, I'm gonna stage it. And it's kind of started like that too, like both of an observation of how they are in the house, my parents, but also this kind of accidental way that their motion interacts. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to sound too, it shouldn't be understood as this very conceptual thing. It's just an interesting ghostly presence in the image. It makes and then it evolved into something, I think, more that, of course, then I'm involved in the process, and I try more things, of course, with the new series. But they really, so to answer your question, he already was trained a little bit, on that kind of thing, and yeah, so he was okay. He was okay with it.
Nice. Yeah, I remember the little girl passing by.
Yeah.
And then because I remember you mentioned this series is a part of a larger project. So does that mean you still have some thought you want to explore something in this series? Is something you can share?
Yeah, I don't know how much I can share at this point, but maybe, yeah, like I think I would like to work with my mother again, because one of the reasons why I couldn't she couldn't follow was she doesn't travel, and some of the iterations I did with my father were not at home. And and she's also, my father is retired, so he has more time. My mom, she's an artist, and she loves being in her atelier, in her studio. And I understand that, of course. Like, so then it's my mom, it works okay if we're at home, or if we're somewhere where she can be comfortable and have a setup to do her thing. So I'm trying to work out something where she has that, so that I can, because something I would like, I would love to have them back both, but in a way that's a bit maybe more mysterious than how they appear in the first iteration of the project, like the 1 minute little vignettes called I think it's Le Vestibule and La Cuisine. You know, that I would like something a little bit I don't know, like, I don't know if I want to talk too much about this, because I don't want to go too far with that.
No, it's
I have to keep it for myself.
yes.
I'm sorry.
No, it's totally fine. About the format, I thought to ask a little bit, because sometimes you shot on Super 8, sometimes on 16, sometimes directly on 35. But sometimes you start Super 8 or start 16 and then finalize on 35. Could you share a bit your decision of the shooting format and the final format?
Yeah. Well, maybe for the final format, I feel it could be an easier answer. Initially, let's say for this series right now, I believed, like, when I started the whole process of 5 years ago for these films, I thought that finishing on 35 was going to be the best solution for projection. So yes, of course, it's projecting 35, you get a better projection, although I did not anticipate how difficult it would be to find venues that can actually do that. And it seems that in the last 10 years, 35 capacity or 35 expertise decreased a little bit. So some places don't screen 35, and it's easier to do it on 16. And I think, I don't know, like, I feel like I was going for, for ease of projection, but then it's not that easy. Like, I now I realize it, but what was the other reason? The other reason was that some in the number 3 of that series, I did shoot 35, and so to finish on 16 would have been a bit strange to go back. But I don't know, like, and I do like to work with 35 as in the finishing, just because I had done it before, and so I had somehow I also like that I will do my own blow-ups, like I don't, for these works until now, at least, I've been fortunate and able to stay in the analog until the final print, which I know maybe at some point I'll have to do a digital intermediate, because it's getting very difficult to do the whole chain like that. But so far it's been nice, and I've learned a lot, just because those 3 films, the last 3, were all done at L'Abominable, and I had never done contact printing before, and it was fantastic to try that, and they were super helpful over there to help me out. And so I wish I can do that again, for sure. But so there was a part of it was that I wanted to learn contact printing, and then why shooting in different, like I said, for, let's say, for Brouillard and the new series, it's really the question of the size of the canvas. Like, if I can say it like this, like Super 8, if I love how, as much as I love how compressed and like flat and really almost like yeah, I don't know what the word would be in English, but c'est comme everything is like écrasé anyway. And then 35, you get this crazy definition that which makes the whole process, not process, but the visual information just produces a different experience. You have much more space to put things, and it's really what I want to see, and 16, yeah, I guess 16 is kind of an in between of stability and all of those things. But yeah, it's a good question. Sometimes it's how easy it is to bring a camera somewhere, and how much space I have in the luggage. And then sometimes if I have the choice, then because 35 millimeter to shoot that, I cannot do that somewhere else than at home. Like and so yeah, I mean I hope that makes sense.
No, it's really nice. I like your answer.
Mm.
And then could you share a little bit, maybe I start with, how did you start working with analog film? Because you do say before there was a time you start to make more like experimental film type of work, and before that maybe you do different things. And then could you share a little bit how did you encounter working with analog film?
It started with photography when I was studying engineering. There was a darkroom club or something at the university where I was doing this, and that's how I started to get interested in film, and that was 1998, I think, or something. And so I mean, I still, when I grew up, like we did have a film camera, so film was not something. I'm part of I think I'm in a generation that grew up with film, so it was not such a foreign object. And then I found the Super 8 camera in a pawn shop around those years, maybe 2000 or something, and at the same time my brother and I we found all the reels, the 8 millimeter reels that my grandfather had, and all of those reels were, we didn't know how to view that, so I think he found a projector, and then we looked at all this, and I was just, wow, like, what is this film? Like, how can there be an image on that? It's so small, and then that's it. I bought a Super 8 camera for, I think it was $30 at the time, and and then I just started to experiment with that, and it could do frame by frame. And at the time I was more involved in music, and I grew up playing drums, and so for me the whole temporal time works almost like a partition, and so with that Super 8 camera I could like plan each frame, and the way I would compose the sequence would almost be like a music sheet kind of thing. And so it was, the first experiments were kind of like that, and just observing light, honestly. Like, there's a lot of early reels. I'm just like shooting things outside and interested in how light hits objects, and very simple things. And and then I discovered experimental cinema through film school. Like, I don't think I would have been exposed as much if I hadn't gone through film school. Like, I was fortunate. I had some really amazing teachers that let me do what I wanted to do. They understood that I needed to try a lot of stuff at the time, and I was really free to do whatever I wanted, and it was really nice. Like, that's how the analog medium was really, partly growing up with that, and then those little anecdotes probably, made me very interested.
And if I could ask, what's the main or a few key reasons that you love analog media, what would that be?
Wow, I think, yeah. Oh, that's it's a difficult one to just. I don't know. I mean, because I like to, I know it's cliche, but I do like to touch, I do like to see the image that I'm working with. I like that, to see it as an actual object. And it's something that I couldn't do with the new series, but with the Brouillard, they're all reversal. They're all shot on reversal. So I have projected those a few times, but it's very stressful, because if something happens in projection, it's it's over. But then I love that those reels exist there's no negative, like there's not another copy, and the prints that I made from those, they're quite different from the original reversal. And so film in the end is, if I can have a reversal object, like the positive image of film, I really love. Like, I really, actually, that might be one of the things I love the most, is the positive image that you get, and being able to project that, for sure. And I don't know, like, yeah.
Is that the reason? Because is that the reason you work with a reversal?
That it's a positive, and well, I think there may be a few reasons, but the fact that I can project it, and it's going to be unique, and it's going to be very detailed, like a reversal projection is always, I find, incredible. And also, it's another one of those things that I mentioned earlier, where, because reversal has such a non-forgiving latitude, I don't know if that word makes sense in English, but if you can't really miss the exposure, like, it has to be kind of like very close, and so it adds another element of tension in the process. Like, I really have to make it make it right somehow, but I think that's kind of just accidental in a way, but quite significant.
Nice, interesting. And one more question, could you share a little bit your working space, like do you have your own dark room, or how is your working situation is for your project in general?
Yeah, well, it's been kind of a portable studio, if I can say it, like, because often wherever I shoot those let's say those the films with my parents or Brouillard, is I displace all my equipment into that space, and I set myself up there, and so I don't have a dedicated studio, let's say, at home. I have my workstation, of course, like where I have a computer. I do a lot of stuff on the computer, for sure, but the dark room, I'll often use the one at Main Film. Main Film is the film co-op in Montreal. It's maybe the equivalent. I don't know what the equivalent would be in the Netherlands, but it's an artist-run center. So that's where I was this week. I was doing optical printing and processing there, and but often the studio of my mother in Quebec, she has. I do a lot of hand processing there, because she has ventilation and good space for that, with sinks. And if I need to do a huge batch of hand processing, often I'll spend a week or two just there in the basement doing that, because there's also a room that can be completely dark too, but it's a portable thing, like, it's yeah.
So you usually do your own processing, and sometimes if you need optical printer, you will do in the studio in Montreal. And then sometimes you mentioned you went to Nabla to do some extra things.
Yeah, like, because I don't own an optical printer, so every time I did that, it was either at Main Film here, or when I had access to Concordia University's gear, I did it there. Or then for these films, yeah, like I use the one at L'Abominable do the blow up, and also for number one, like the one of the three, the production, I shot it in Paris, and then I did all the processing, and the Super 8 to 16 was at L'Abominable as well. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
And then maybe one of my last question is, what kind of film you actually would like to explore?
What kind of film would you like to explore?
Almost like what kind of film you want to make.
And
what's important for you, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Maybe, I feel like I always enjoy when I see something I haven't seen before. And as long as that keeps happening with what I'm doing, I'll probably still work and still try to generate that excitement. It's a very naive thing. Like I love being in producing a visual world that intrigues me, or it's really basic. I love texture, I love color, I love how things, it's just like like as long as I'm fascinated and excited, I think I just want to make something that produces that in me, and maybe for some people it's different, but for me it's really that I think it's a driving force for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And is anything you would like to share that I didn't ask?
I think it was a very thorough interview. Thank you, Likun, for this. It's it's interesting. It's almost feels like I'm being analyzed a little bit.
You didn't say tortured.
Yeah, no, it's nice. It's always tricky for me to to express things somehow. Like I'm always like torn, like with like, I don't know. It's just so sometimes it's nice when someone directs and kind of like I thought I hope it's gonna make some sense,
No, I think it's really, really, really beautiful what you have shared. Yeah, so it's really
Thank you.
great. Thank you. Yeah.